Hey everybody, I'm going to do a little quick video today of a video that's going to be partially review, partially kind of shootout between these two models of knives, which I happen to like both of. A little bit more of a long-term update on the Hogue here, and this one has only been with me a few days, but I'm definitely loving it. And in addition, talking a little bit about why I felt it necessary to kind of see a point of comparison between these. And just kind of like for unboxing's sake, I know that as a collector, at least to me, there's a bit of an interest in how these companies do their packaging. But on the left, this is the Hogue and Doug Ritter collaboration Mini RSK Mark 1 G2. And on the right, this is the TRM Neutron number 2, or the NEW Neutron. This is one I've been after for quite a while. This one was the second knife I got. And when I got this one, this was actually like I had seen a couple of videos out there speaking highly of both of these, and at the time I was thinking, oh, I was trying to decide between the two, not realizing that this would be a complete odyssey trying to get my hands on one, because they are in very high demand, small production company, but awesome company that interacts really great with their fans and everything. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, the Hogue is pretty great too, especially with Doug Ritter is running the Knife Rights organization, is very active in a lot of that. So nice to support both companies, got a lot of respect, all made in the USA. I'm going to start out with sort of a semi-unboxing of both, just to give you a sense of kind of the first impressions and kind of gives you a little bit of sense of the marketing and how these companies do things. Here's the Hogue. First thing I will point out and ding them on that I've noticed, and this bugged me even though I've never seen anybody else point it out, is it says the knife was designed by former recon Marine Alan Leishowitz. Well, every other knife that Hogue does has been designed by Alan Leishowitz, including this one. That's another favorite of mine. This is the X1 Microflip by Hogue, but this one was designed by Doug Ritter, and apparently they never bothered to change the printing on their packaging, which seems a little odd to me, especially when they actually bothered to monogram the name on the pouch that came in. Both came with stickers in the box as well that I've obviously taken out and stuck up here like the company, so why not? On this one just has the nice little pouch that comes with, so there you go. The Neutron, on the other hand, comes in a slightly nicer box. Comes out like this. Instead of being treated to the recon Marine guy, you're first off is seeing the Tycoon, their little Yorkie dog there, which is kind of nice, fits with the theme of the company. And of course, here's the knife. No pouch or anything that comes with this. And I should also point out that this knife, these are not the original scales for the knife. One of the tricks that I'll mention later is that it's got these removable, swappable scales. It came with these micarta ones. I bought these as extras that I currently have on it at the moment. But yeah, a little bit interesting. And to start out, let's just show these blades. So, why I feel these warranted a comparison. Like I said, just based on the specs, there's a lot of similarities here, and I'll try to run through it fairly quick. These are both 3-inch blades. They are both 0.09-inch blade stock. They are both 20 CV blade steel. They both open with thumb studs, and they are both in G10 handles, at least right now. This is in G10, although that changes all the time. Most importantly to me in a lot of ways was not only the length and overall dimensions, but the specific blade shape. This drop point that both have is very similar to my eyes, at least. I like it, it's well rounded. It a little bit reminiscent of, like the bug out and stuff. And both have a relatively full flat grind. The Hogue isn't a complete full flat, and this one is. They're both quite slicey, although the Neutron is definitely much more of a laser beam. Ridiculously sharp out of the box for both of them. It's going to be a little bit of a tougher to give them a comparison since I've owned the Hogue here for 9 or 10 months-ish, and I've done my own sharpening on it before I was all that great at it, so can't really judge them based on that, even though I think I've done pretty well with it. But this guy certainly is very impressive right out of the box. Significant differences that I'll show just from a purely specs kind of perspective. The one thing that I definitely notice in hand and in pocket is that this guy is considerably narrow on this dimension, at least feeling compared to this. Part of that is also just because of the, it's slightly wider in this dimension than this guy. It's also a little bit longer in the handle overall. But to me, at least, I somewhat prefer the sort of long in this dimension, skinny in this dimension, at least in my hand. This was one of the biggest shocks of the Neutron here, was the ergonomics of it. In hand, it reminds me a lot of a Spyderco, like the Para 3. And, you know, Spyderco is kind of says that they're built for the hand and not for the eye, and that's kind of makes sense. Spydercos are a little weird looking. This looks just like a very, you know, I hate to say basic because that sounds pejorative, but it looks like what anybody who's not a knife person would imagine as a knife looking like. But the ergonomics on it are just stellar. That was one of the most pleasant surprises for me. Another thing worth pointing out, in addition to the different scale materials, while I'm on that, is there is a 3D contoured scales that they offer for this that might fill the hand out a little bit differently. I wasn't too interested in the options available, especially for the price difference. We'll see down the line if they do any of the fancier G-Carta or wood scale patterns that they do for some of their older models. I'll be keeping an eye out because I like this guy. The Hogue, in comparison, is fine. Just to my hands, I don't want to say it feels small. It doesn't feel quite as, I don't know. It's just different. The one thing you feel with this is that you can feel that your fingers aren't nearly as close to the edge of the blade there, which just doesn't make it quite as precise feeling if you're doing anything with any kind of detail to it, although it is, you know, absolutely fine for choking up and whatnot. And the other big thing is the clip on this guy is much more of sort of a hot spot or kind of uncomfortable thing on the Hogue compared to this. This clip definitely disappears. So yeah, in that category, I gotta say the ergonomics and the blade on this guy just went out because of the way it's got more of a flat, and just in my hand at least feels better, feels a little bit better for up close kind of detail work. The other major difference, which I did not point out, but this was actually one of my big kind of considerations at the time as I was just getting into the hobby, was finding something with an interesting locking mechanism. Hogue uses what they call the Able lock. It's basically just their version of the Benchmade Axis lock. It's went out of patent that expired, so all these other companies are putting out their own versions of it. The Griptilians and bug outs and other things from Benchmade I've handled, you know, I couldn't notice the difference between this operation and those. And that's the one big thing that this has, at least from a use perspective, is just the fidget factor. Both pop out with the thumb studs. I tend to prefer doing the kind of Spidey flick with the middle finger on the back on both of them. But this guy, you can see, you can just open and close very easily. The detent is a little soft because it's based on that, so you can literally just shake it out. Or you can do the thing where you pull the bar. So that gives this guy a lot more fidget factor and flashiness compared to this. This is a much more traditional liner lock that you would see on, you know, all kinds of knives that you would find at Walmart or the hardware store or something. So in terms of fidget factor, this guy wins as a result of that locking mechanism. And one other thing I haven't seen demonstrated or tested and pointed out with a lot of knife reviews that I've watched, but that's interesting to me, is testing out what's it like to operate with a glove. Because one-hand operation is obviously nice in general, but it's a lot different when you're doing it when you're wearing a glove. And with this, it's still absolutely fine with that lock. This guy, on the other hand, yeah, I'm struggling. You can do it, but it's not very pleasant. And something I'm thinking about right now because it's upstate New York. It's the beginning of March. I'm still wearing gloves outside. So in that case, that's another win for this Axis style lock. The one thing I will say that is a downfall in a way of the Axis lock versus a much more traditional locking mechanism like this guy is because it's the liner lock is less flashy, quote unquote. I say that in kind of terms of impressive or cool looking to people who aren't into the knife hobby and everything. That makes this guy much easier and more simple and straightforward to just be able to hand to somebody who might need to borrow a knife to open an Amazon box at work or something like that. Everybody's going to know how to just, open this knife, even if they're doing it two-handed and whatnot. And most people will be able to figure out without too much trouble that it's a liner lock. You press this over, you close the blade. This guy, because it's so false shut, people seem to get that works like that. But you'll get a lot of, because it just drops shut, people who have never experienced this and aren't all that interested, or maybe have only handled things that are, sticky like that. Well, that's very smooth, but they haven't handled things that are just going to flop around and everything like that when they're unlocked. So you could hand this to your friend or your coworker. They go to close it. They cut their knuckles up. You angered someone. So that's a consideration. And then finally, the other big point of distinction for me, at least, between these as knives, and the last thing we'll get to is a little bit outside of that, is just the degree of just aesthetic looks, beauty in that sense. And that's a case where this, the Ritter Hogue model has really grown away for me in a lot of ways. It feels very plain in certain ways. It just doesn't, it doesn't excite me too much for some reason, even though, the novelty of the locking mechanism and everything is nice. But other than that, it's very plain. There aren't a lot of, customization options. I think they have like an orange handle version of this. I don't remember if it had a black coated blade, but it had black hardware and everything. And I think they do some other version. But it's pretty much what you see is what you get. And, it's based on and very, very similar to the Benchmade Mini Griptilians, which are, fairly common. You can find it, the REI, local sporting goods stores. So it feels a little bit derivative in that kind of sense. I just happen to prefer this over, the classic ones based on the blade shape and value and everything else. The TRM, on the other hand, is very much supportive and open for the customization. First and foremost, obviously, is with the scale swaps. These were the natural micarta scales it came with. As you can kind of see, these particular ones is what I chose that I really like. They've got a little bit of a leathery kind of feel to it. And they are going to be putting out more and more different options. You can easily swap out these scales, put on, I believe they have G10, which is what this is. They have micarta in the natural color or in a greenish. They've got carbon fiber scales, textured in just a bunch of different colors of G10. And then they've got third-party support is going to be coming out before long, with even doing a lot of custom wood scales through their Facebook group. And then they've done some cool G-Carta patterns, I think they call it, like Mexican blanket looking patterns and Starry Night, other kind of interesting designs. One of the things I liked about the original was they had, the atom kind of diagram. As a science geek, I liked on some of the scales because they call it the Neutron. So I'd like to be able to get my hands on something like that. And overall, just the lines of it I find very, I don't know, it's basic, but it's very nice to me. It's the kind of knife in this case where it's like, before you get into the hobby, and you're dealing with, you know, something you bought for 15 bucks at Walmart or something like that, and you've got these complaints about things that feel janky, or it doesn't feel sharp, or it's tough to open and close, and it's like, man, I really wish that, you know, I had a knife that wasn't an issue. And that's what this feels like. It does everything absolutely flawlessly, very simply, without being, you know, overly loud or flashy, or, you know, really doing anything all that. I don't want to say not innovative, but, you know, no fancy locking mechanisms, no fancy opening mechanisms. The scale swap ability is cool and innovative, but it's a liner lock that opens with thumb studs with a drop point, and it's just done very well. And they put a lot of time and care into these, and I like to see it. So kind of the last thing in this is more about pricing and availability, and that's really the big difference that, you know, I did not take into account when I was looking to get, you know, my second good knife or whatever, because I just had no idea. I thought, okay, well, these are about 140. This is the second version, but at the time the original was 160, something like that. So these are 182.50 in their stock form with G10, plus a little bit of shipping. These are a Knife Center exclusive for 140, shipping included. And even though these are knifecenter.com exclusive, they seem to be widely available. They've got a hit on their hands and don't seem to be having an issue with getting more. Neutron, on the other hand, is much more of an odyssey to get my hands on. These are no longer being sold through third-party retailers like Blade Center or Blade HQ or anything like that. Combining my names here. It's all through the Three Rivers site, threeriversmfg.com, as you can see on the sticker. And they come in very limited quantities, limited batches. This one I got in the early March 2021 drop, where they released, you know, a few hundred knives. You had to sit on your computer, refresh the page several times over in the window they gave you, and be ready to just pull the trigger, grab one, check out, and there you go. I was able to get lucky and get it. So this is much more exclusive and an enthusiast kind of thing, which, you know, in a way, now that I have one in hand, makes me appreciate it more, but I can understand why that's frustrating for, you know, more casual people who don't have the opportunity to do that. Overall, they both do feel like pretty great value to me. The Hogue, certainly, I love the work that I've done and handled from them. The micro flip here that I showed earlier is one that caught me off guard with how much I found up carrying it and loving it. And really, both of these, if I were a sane person, would be excellent choices of, you know, the first, last, and only knife I would ever need. I enjoy flippers. I enjoy fun actions with bearings and whatnot, and just checking out different things. But knowing what I know now, if I had found the Neutron in stock at the time, I absolutely would have jumped on that instead of this, just because of the relative rarity of the TRM stuff. And I'll definitely be looking for more stuff from TRM, like, you know, the Atom and the Nerd, which is the smaller one. The Atom's slightly larger. And then Hogue, you know, I've been impressed with their quality, their value overall, the materials that they use. You're getting a just well-manufactured American products, under $200, with a, you know, very high-end premium blade steels, done well, you know, excellent sharpening by people who care about it. So I'm happy to have both in my permanent collection, and yeah, those are my thoughts. I know that I've talked about a lot of things that, you know, probably have gone over in plenty of other reviews, but just wanted to get my thoughts out and mention a few other observations I've had as time has gone on. So everybody, have a good rest of your weekend. Enjoy.